Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hi. My name is Ciarra Malone, and I am the Georgia State Coordinator for Campus Vote Project, and I will be here moderating these amazing student organizers on our student panel today. I'd like to first start off by having everyone say their name, their pronouns, the school they attend, and the role that they play on their campus.
I can go. My name is Amaya Rearden, she, her. I am an Alabama A&M University AGF ambassador.
Hey everyone, I'm Christina Williams, pronouns she, her, hers. I'm a junior political science major at Clark Atlanta University, where I serve as a Campus Vote Project Democracy Fellow, as well as some other student leadership roles.
All right, well, I'm so glad to be talking to you guys today, and we can just go ahead and get the show started. First, I'd like to ask both of you guys how you started your work in student organizing on campus.
Christina, you want to?
Sure, I'll take it. Funny story, I just kind of sort of fell into this. I've always been civically engaged on my own since high school. I've always been very excited about voting and just being involved in my community. And when I got to college, I saw that that wasn't necessarily the norm. And I couldn't really understand why. And I started to think about what I could do to get my peers more engaged, to help them access information more, and really just get more civically engaged as well.
And Amaya?
Yeah, mine is kind of like that as well. So let's see. In high school, I was very interested. I did student government, but I didn't hold any leadership positions in student government. I just kind of did it because I was interested in politics and all that stuff. And then in 2018, I did March for Our Lives, and I put together one of our the protests or whatever in Montgomery. So after that, I was like, okay, well, if I really want to make a difference and all the things that I see on the news and whatnot, then I have to become civically engaged. So a few months ago, one of the advisors from my organizations reached out to me, and she told me about the Andrew Goodman Foundation and Vote Everywhere. So I kind of got into it through her. I got into this through her.
Mm-hmm. Well, those are both amazing stories. I'm so glad that you guys felt inspired by the world around you to bring civic engagement, not only around your community, but to your campus. And so I'd like to ask you, what has your experience organizing on campus looked like in terms of voting participation and voting turnout?
Let's see. So I'm sorry, it just caught me off guard. My phone started ringing. Could you repeat the last part of your question real quick?
Yeah, no, I can repeat the question. You're fine. I said, what has your experience organizing on campus looked like in terms of voting participation and voting turnout?
Oh, yeah. So, okay. So the precinct near our campus does not necessarily get a ton of turnout from the community, which I'm not a huge fan of, but I went to vote. So my mother actually lives here in Madison. I live in Huntsville, on campus now. But I came out here to vote a few weeks ago, and the whole day only 45 people had voted. So I was like, okay, that's not a lot happening here. But when students are on campus in March, we actually organized where we had about 550 people out there. So I realized that certain stuff, being able to really meet people where they're at is the best place, is the best opportunity or the best way you can really engage with people. And now with COVID, it's a lot more difficult to really meet people where they're at. So it's looked like you're right there, you're going to them, but it doesn't necessarily look like that now.
Definitely understandable.
Yeah, so this is really my first experience organizing more behind the scenes. And it's definitely been very interesting doing it in the time of COVID-19. Clark Atlanta University is completely remote right now. So the biggest challenge has been getting the right information to the right students. Some are registered in Georgia, some are registered outside of Georgia. And it's been the most challenging, again, to get people the right information, but also to get them to remain interested long enough. Um, we all know that Georgia is a state that has a lot of voter suppression, especially with the gubernatorial election with Stacey Abrams. A lot of students turned out for that, but then when things didn't necessarily go the way that they voted, a lot of them got discouraged. So the main focus has been trying to get people back interested and to remain interested and to get the right information.
Christina, I think you bring up a really great point that a lot of times students feel really easily discouraged when voting doesn't turn out the way they thought it would, right? Especially in states like Georgia, where voter suppression is something that's very rampant. Although we talked about the challenges, what do you guys think has been the biggest success on your campus in terms of voting participation, voting turnout, getting students civically engaged?
I believe that last year that was probably one of the biggest successes for voter turnout, because even though AGF is nonpartisan, I was campaigning for a candidate at that point. And you realize that once you go to people, like especially on election day, most of the time people aren't actively saying, I refuse to vote. Like most of the time people forget, or they're not sure who they're voting for. That is one of the biggest things, because people oftentimes don't want to go in uninformed, but there's so much information about candidates that it becomes overwhelming. Like this candidate in particular, their website with their policies is enough to fill a book. It's very, very long. And working people, students don't necessarily have time for that. So being able to bring people resources like Ballotpedia, which I talked about last night, which I love. It has people's voting records. It has where they stand on this issue. Politico, they will give like little synopses of candidates for national elections. Sometimes on local levels, like there's an election for mayor last month in Huntsville, and Rocket City Mom, this like random mom who tells you about like all the events going on in Huntsville, did an entire thing with candidates where they gave like 100-word little paragraphs to the person who put it together, and you can just kind of read how they feel about the issues in your area. So being able to compile resources for people and be able to come to them is definitely one of the biggest successes.
I think that our biggest success so far, and what I hope will be our biggest success overall, is finding more creative ways to connect to the students and to get them interested. Of course, COVID-19 kind of forced us to do that, but the different things like the digital organizing and really including it in course information, I really hope that that will help us with the longevity that we're searching for, and really helping institutionalize civic engagement in the school, these different digital resources and different ways to share that information.
No, definitely. I was going to bring up, because Amaya was talking about such great resources like Ballotpedia and all these other websites where all this information is available. How do you guys work to get students to actually get access and view that information, right? Because there is so much information online, but it's one thing to have it there and another thing to give access to your students on campus. You know what I mean? So in what ways have you guys worked to provide access to these resources for your peers and your campus community?
Well, one thing I've actually done recently as yesterday, I made a link tree, which is, if you don't know, a link that will hold different links that you can post on your social media. And it has a link to how to register to vote, how to request a ballot, how to research about it and all that. And I just put it on my own personal Instagram. And I did that because I know a lot of my peers come to me for a lot of their information and resources, and I don't always know right then and there, like specific information for their state. But I think that makes it more accessible for them to just go on my page and find. But also something our university has done is incorporated civic engagement resources, the same information, how to research your ballot, how to register, how to request a ballot, into our online courses as modules so that students can always view that information.
I love that. That's such a good idea. I love that. One thing, like you were talking about adding a link tree, which I never heard of that. I'm going to check it out. But something Nicole was talking about, how on campus there are tons of like micro influencers and people who have large followings. Like I know one guy, like my friend is friends with or whatever, he has like 10,000 followers on Instagram. Like the entire school follows him. So if he puts something there, they're going to see it. That's just that's going to happen. So access in terms of the internet is not as much who has like the resources to access it, but it's more how can they? Will they know that they can access this information? How are you going to put this in front of their face and make it relevant enough to them that they click on it? So definitely utilizing people with bigger followers is number one. That's, I wouldn't say number one, but it's up there.
No, I think both of you guys' answers to that question were incredible. Christina, I have actually like used Linktree before, so I think that's a really great idea. It really allows for you to kind of filter through someone's social media account and click the links that are like you're most interested in. So I think that that's a really great resource. I know that you guys are actively working towards voter participation and voter engagement on campus prior to specifically the November elections. So I would love to know you guys' plan to engage students on your campus prior to November, but also your plan to engage students in the aftermath of the November elections, right? Because we all know that no matter who wins the presidential election, that there's a lot of work to be done and that we have to make sure that students stay engaged.
Yes. Oh, take it away, Amaya. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, that's actually a really, really important point to me, is making sure that we maintain this momentum beyond November. And my strategy with that is really using the different student organizations that I'm involved in, kind of to get a larger reach and to really expand just beyond voting and really talk more about advocacy and holding elected officials accountable, how to research legislation, how to lobby for it, how to even find it, because that's not really common knowledge, and what to do with that and how to contact your legislators, all those types of things, and just making it part of everyday life, really. So having different events to, again, research legislation that's important to students. Once we are back on ground, having days to go visit the Capitol, having days to go visit legislators, inviting them to campus, making it more so of an open dialogue so that we know after you vote for someone, you can still hold them accountable to their job.
No, for sure, Christina. I think it's really important that you said we not only vote for them, but we hold them accountable afterwards. I think a lot of times both constituents and the people representing them forget that their job is to serve us and that it's our job to hold them accountable throughout that reign, right? So I think it's really important to make sure that we don't let elected officials think that we've forgotten about the work that they're doing, but also that we keep in mind that we have to be holding them accountable throughout the entire time that they're in service.
Absolutely. Like, I think one of the most important things is a few generations before us, they were raised on ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And I think we have to remind people that the government is by the people and for the people. The government is for you. So you need to be actively involved in something that is for you. And don't get it twisted. Like, you have to have that like presence of mind, and don't just revisit these candidates every 2 years, every 4 years, every 6 years. You need to be checking up on them. Honestly, like they're your family, and making sure they're doing right. Because if they're working for you and they're not doing what you elect them to do, then they should not have that job. So really going into the next few years, I was talking to the president of our SGA, and he would like to hold like a vote coming so people are excited about the about civic engagement. It's not, there's nothing boring about it. Like there's a lot going on all the time, and you can blink your eyes and miss something. So just involving like other campus organizations so that they keep that engagement up there whenever we are not in an election season would probably be like, or an election year for midterms or general elections, because there's an election happening on the local level every year. But just emphasizing the importance of engagement, calling your senators, emailing your senators, so on and so forth.
No, Amaya, that was perfectly said. That's exactly what I think needs to happen as well. And I think that's a wonderful reminder that this country is by the people and for the people, and not us serving our country, right? Like our elected officials are there to serve us, and it's our job to hold them accountable, but it's their job to make sure that they are appropriately representing us in ways that give us equity, right? And so I think that's really important. I'd also like to ask you guys a question that I think has been a question I've been asking myself a lot lately, right? And it is, what will we do and say to our peers, to our students, to other Black and Brown people in this country if the elections do not turn out in the way that they feel they should, right? So after this happens and students, Black people begin to feel hopeless in terms of civic engagement and voting and making sure that their voices are heard, how do we have conversations with them after that, right? And even if it, no matter how the elections turn out, how do we have conversations with them to help them understand that what they're doing matters and that their vote is going towards something, and that civic engagement is going to mean something to them, right? Because no matter whether we've had a Democratic or a Republican president, Black people have still struggled. And I think that a lot of times voting feels really redundant. And we all know that voting is not end all to be all, but a lot of times it can feel like we've done this and nothing's happening, right? So what kind of conversation do we have with our people after the fact?
Yeah, I will say I definitely have no perfect answer to that question, but just a couple of things that come to mind is definitely just to remind each other that change does not happen overnight. Change is constant, and it's something that you work towards every day. We may not get it in November, we may not get it the next November, but that's why we have to continue to fight for that. Also, something that you touched on, voting is not the only way to get the change that we want. Voting is very, very important, but that's just one channel and one avenue to the overall change that we want. So outside of voting, that's why it's important, again, no matter who wins, to continue to lobby for the things that are important to us, to continue to stay involved and educated, to not check out right after November, to stay plugged into our state and local elections. And really to also look more inside of our community for the change that we want. We need more people from our community running for office. We need more people from our community writing policies and writing legislation. And when they do that, we need to support them. So really change can come from more avenues than just this one election in November. And I think that I would just want us all to keep that in mind.
I think you could also use history to show how, like you were saying, like it may not necessarily be like this election, but you do have to keep pushing towards it. Because if people had given up in the past, like, oh man, well, we didn't get such and such and so and so, then nothing would be better now, like at all. Like if people had just given up on like like the Clean Water Act the first time, then there will be a lot more issues today. You can't just and it can definitely be draining, if you allow it to be, if you don't take care of yourself, working towards any type of social justice, civic engagement. It can be, because it's everything that's wrong with the world is right there in your face all the time. But you also have to keep in mind that you're working towards more, and you're working. So Generation Alpha does not have to do all this when they're 16, 17, 18, 19 years old. So they can just breathe clean air and and be teenagers.
No, I think that both of you guys touched on something that's really important, and it's that change isn't going to come overnight. Like Christina said, it might not be this November, it might not be next November, but we have to continue to work. And like you said, Amaya, what if they had given up on the Clean Water Act the first time? You have to keep trying. And so I definitely think that keeping up that momentum for students on campus is going to be something that's really vital come this November, come next November, come the years beyond us being on these campuses. And so for my last question, I would really like to hear from you guys what the ideal future for HBCU's civic engagement will look like for you guys, right? What if, not even what if, what do you guys picture and hope will happen come this November, come afterwards for your campuses?
I really hope that civic engagement will not feel like a chore, but feel more like a lifestyle. Even beyond just being a duty, literally feeling like a lifestyle. I hope that it will really be normalized. I hope that people will not only understand the importance, but that they'll remember it beyond just November, that the momentum can last throughout my generation, that people can stay informed and really, again, learn how to advocate beyond just voting. Hope that more young people of color run for office, and I hope that more people support them. Overall, I just really hope that it is really institutionalized and becomes more of a lifestyle. Like a mark of our generation.
And I agree with that a lot. I really would like to see civic engagement and voting to become a part of campus culture. At the University of Alabama, in sororities and fraternities, you're voting. That's just kind of it. So I would like for it to be something that is natural at Alabama A&M University. That's natural at Howard. That's natural at NCAT. Homecoming. You already know homecoming is going to happen. You know the Magic City class is going to happen. You know that voting is going to happen. That should be, that's what I would like to see going forward. That's what I would like to see this November. And I like for people to be, certainly I like for students to be excited about it. I want them to be like, hey dude, you're going to vote? Last time I voted, personally, the times I've gotten to vote, because some of the times I was not able to vote, but I'm going, 3-1 at this point. So, I mean, that's exciting. That's an exciting feeling to know your candidates won. It's fun. So that's what I would like to see going forward.
No, I think that's what we would all like to see all around from what both of you guys said. And in those efforts, how would you guys like to see that supported from your peers to your administrators on your campus? How would you guys like to see civic engagement supported in the future so that these ideal future goals could eventually become a reality?
Well, I would say the main thing for me is to just start to close these gaps, whether that be gaps between the students and administration, gaps between my generation and previous ones. It's one thing for us to do the work, but we shouldn't need to start from scratch. Amaya, like you said, looking at history, especially attending school in the AUC, there's really a lot of history of organizing and information that I don't feel like is shared enough with current students. And I think that that would be really powerful if we could get a lot more support and insight and just advice from those previous leaders about how we can adjust to right now and moving forward.
Yeah. And to piggyback off what Christina said, basically, I feel like that is the biggest thing. Because, like, I feel like so much that we hear from our generation is like, y'all don't stay off your phones, you're apathetic, you're this, you're that, the other. We need support, okay? We don't need condemnation. We need support. We need advice. We need financial support. We need, like, we need to be understood, because like we're doing this life thing for like this is we haven't been this age before, you know, and like from somebody who has been this age before, somebody that has done that work before. Many of our professors have done that work before. Like they know, they were organizing in the 60s and 70s. They were organizing around like the Vietnam War. So definitely having support from our university and encouragement from the university is absolutely things that we need going forward too.
No, that's great to hear. And I think you guys are 100% correct in terms of really filling in those gaps, right? Between our generation and older generations. Even in the way we organize, sometimes we'll see certain events that will only have one generation at a time and not all of us coming together to do something. So I think that's really important. And I definitely think that going into the future, that will be something that really helps to make a difference. Is there anything that either of you guys would like to say as your final words to leave us with today?
Yeah, I'd just like to say two things really. Silence is approval. I'll leave that alone. And secondly, there's a place for everyone in civic engagement. I know a lot of times I am in a privileged position to be attending a university and getting that education and having access to all of this, but I think that civic engagement really is accessible to everyone. That knowledge should be accessible to everyone, and there's a place for every person in our community to be civically engaged and informed. Go vote.
That was great. One thing I would like to say, it's actually also about accessibility. Make sure that when you are doing voter engagement, voter registration, all that, that you make it accessible for people who may have disabilities, and make sure that you're aware of laws administered or like pertaining to disability rights when it comes to voting, because they're a whole different set of rules. Make sure you're like considerate to the fact that some people do not have English literacy. Even if they are U.S. citizens, they may not be functionally literate. So people have different reasons that they don't vote or they have difficulty voting. But if you reach people's like family members who are in that position, you can make a huge difference in their lives. For people who have never voted before or who have never been able to vote before because they didn't think they could. So.
No, I think that y'all are amazing, first of all. I love to see the passion behind student organizers on campus. It definitely gives everybody hope for the future. And I think that if there's one thing that we leave thinking, it's not that young people don't want to vote, it's that there are barriers in young people's way for them to be able to access the ballot box. And so I think addressing a lot of those inequalities and equities when it comes to voting, Amaya, is super important, right? Especially like language barriers, disability barriers, those are all things that I think sometimes get neglected when we're thinking about whether or not people are voting. So I think it's great that you brought that up. And Christina, I also 100% agree. I would love to see more young people of color running for office and them getting the support that they need to continue that fight, right? Because a lot of times you have to be in a privileged position to even be able to take such steps. And so a lot of these people need support. And that takes us being constantly involved, way prior to November, right? Because running for office requires efforts beginning in that previous year most of the time. So I think that is all. If we don't have any questions from the audience. Oh, someone wants to know how we can find you guys on Instagram. Someone specifically would love to see your link tree, Ms. Williams.
Well, thank you for that. You can find me on Instagram at thepeoples.politician, ironically, at thepeoples.politician. And I actually think I can type it in here for you. And thanks for asking.
And you too, Amaya, I think they wanted.
I wasn't sure. It is at Amaya Rearden. I don't know if my name is down here because it just says you, but it's AMAYAREARDEN. And that's it on Instagram and Twitter and probably everything else too.
All right. Well, thanks so much, guys, for talking to us today. This was a great session, and I'm really glad that we were able to hear from you guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.